going for 2. You want to challenge me a little bit more with the glasses and the teeth and all of that. Okay. But I got more ones. Oh, I got Linda asking me for a 1. Okay. All right. I guess it's going to be 1. I am so sorry to those 2s. But I'm happy to do either one. So I'm going to get started while people are coming on. I see more people are coming on. But I will tell you how I found this. This is an actress. And it was on my TV, and she was so beautiful. I really felt, I paused the TV, and I took the picture with my phone, and I said, I have to paint that face. So here is my drawing right here, and I'm just going to prop up the picture in my little stand here so that it doesn't flop all over when I go to paint them. Okay, so what I want to do first is very much, there's a light coming from that left side. So what I want to do very quickly is get a nice side shadow on that shadow side. And I'm going to do it with my famed dragon's blood, which I love, the dragon's blood. And it's just a beautiful, cool orange. And I'm really crazy about it. Now, when you're coming around the hair, what you want to do is you want to carry the color into the hair so that you don't end up with, and her hair is darker, so you just don't want to end up with a helmet looking thing. So you just carry the color smack into her hairline. And then I'm just going to soften this because this is where the light is sort of hitting her. And my students, I tell my students this all the time, you don't save your dark. So yes, we have a nice dark eyebrow. We're going to build that. And we're going to come around. And I just want to get this nice wash down first, and then I'll go into the eyes. You want to paint in between the brow a little bit. It's not real strong, but you want that because it says bridge of the nose when you put that area right there across the face. Just feathering right into the hair. I'm not really worried about her hair is nice and dark, so, but even if it wasn't, I would do the same thing. And now the corner of her eye, we get really darker there. And I am going to add a little bit of a violet in there, which is a nice color to sort of create even a darker feeling there. Oh, and people are coming in. I hear ding dongs. Welcome, whoever just came in. Hope you got your cocktail. And she was just so beautiful that I just really was compelled to paint her. And that happens. I do see things on TV. They have such beautiful lighting and wonderful, you know, opportunities to grab such great things that you see on TV. A little bit under that eye, just a little bit. It's just so fair. She's very fair. And the lighting on her is just so gorgeous. And of course, that's what we always look for, is great lighting. And that's one of the problems with a lot of the photographs that I see. It's like, you know, you're looking at the photograph from a perspective of straight on, and it doesn't really lend itself, unless you have this strong lighting, to help you through the features. The shadows really help you build the features. I'm not going to paint lipstick. I just want to paint that upper lip a little bit there. And this is really important part, is that shadow on the fulcrum, that little spot between the nose and the mouth. I learned that yesterday. That's what it was, fulcrum. We don't save our dark, so I went right through that lip and coming down, and really nice, soft color. Cheekbone. When I went to FIT, we had to learn all of the body, the bone structure, and so many of the things that I utilize in the classes are really things that I learned early on at FIT, you know, with muscles and bones and all of these wonderful classes, because I took illustration, and we were drawing the body, you know, hours and hours every day. I dropped a little violet in there. I think that looks nice. I could darken this side of her nose a little bit more. Watercolors dry lighter, so we definitely want to know that we can build it a little bit darker as we go along. As I see it drying, I'm going to make adjustments. Always, always. And now it's interesting because there's a nice blue kick. So maybe the lighting was daylight. Daylight was hitting the side of her face. So I'm going to add a little blue on this side. And I know that that sounds very strange for a portrait, but it really does do the trick. A little bit of more violet on that shadow of her under her lip here. And it's just moving. The watercolor is just moving in a very soft way for me. Nothing's really that hard. Everything's such a soft touch right now because it's wet. So we call this wet into wet. While all this is drying, I'm going to go up here because this is sort of dried up here. So I want to get that eyebrow. And I'm going to start the eyebrow just with my dragon's blood. I don't want to go in and put like a dark color in it quite yet because it's just a little too harsh. I'm going to see if I need it. I might, as we build a dark hair, we might need to go darker with the eyebrow, but it's just kind of a light touch right now. You build it, you build all these things and build that nice eyelid. A little bit of violet in there. And this is sort of dry, so I'm just going to build that. I'm touching it, the paper, just to make sure it's on the drier side. And I definitely want to go in and get those eyes sooner than later. Okay. Oh, I got a nice wash to go in there. Oh, and before I get too far, I'm just going to add a little bit of blue, very light blue, just to indicate that maybe there's some daylight hitting her on this side of her face. Very subtle. I like the idea of that subtle blue. It's really a nice way to drop in colors that you might not think you would normally do for a portrait, but yet our faces do have all these colors to them, especially depending on the type of light that we're standing in. So that it's a light blue, which is looking really good. Okay, and a little bit down here. And again, we're listening to Howard Emerson. Thank you so much for gifting me your beautiful, fabulous music. So I know you probably can't hear it all that well, but he's finger picking in the background. Oh, hello, who just came in? I hear people coming in. And they do look weird unless we put eyes in. So I'm going to go right up and start those eyes. For sure. I usually start with the eyes. I don't know why I didn't. I just wanted to get a nice wash down first. Let's go in and do those eyes because they just look so strange without them. So the first color I'm going to start with is a dragon's blood because I just want it to be like a nice soft outline to her eye. I'll go darker, but it's a really nice, good starting point. And particularly like if it's a young person and they're not wearing makeup or whatever, you want to just start very, very lightly. We're going to go darker because she does have, beautiful eyelashes and shape to her eye and whatnot. Doesn't really look like she has a whole lot of makeup on. Her eyes are sort of like a hazel color, I want to say. So the way you get a hazel is maybe with a little green, Let's add a little green color to it. I have a lot of nice greens that I could add. And let's grab some of that here. And of course, if I was trying to get somebody, you know, to look exactly like she does, that would be, I'd really want to make sure I got the right eye color. Now, the only thing you have to save in an eye is really that white highlight that you have going on here. That's the only part that you really have to save. And of course, there's lots of ways to get a nice white back, so we don't have to worry about that either. But I like the idea of saving a white. I think that's really important. Oh, they're coming in a little later today. Okay. And because that sun is hitting her on this side, there's a little bit of blue over here too. Now, if I want to tone down that green and get it to be a little darker, the complement of the green is a red. I know it sounds very counterintuitive, but by adding a little red, I can tone down that green and yet it stays green. So that's how I get my deeper colors. I could go into my browns. I have like a Van Dyke and a burnt umber and a raw, I don't know, lots of different browns. They tend to dull things out a little bit. So let's see what happens with this. And with eyes, you sort of need to make sure that before you go too far into things, that things are dry. Otherwise, you know, you have eyes that are just bleeding all over the place. All your colors are bleeding. So you want to be a little careful with that. So time the areas that you're working on the eyes. So I just got a little darker with that one eye. A little bit darker helps me to, with a little bit of violet. Sort of building that eyelid. And one nice little trick that we do is to make the eyeball appear round. We put a little bit of blue in each corner, just a touch, not a lot, but it makes it feel round. It's a nice little trick. Do I see it in the photo? No, but I know that that's a very good thing to do within eyes. Now I'm going to go for a little bit darker color. I'm going to go into my indigo. Because I don't have a lot of water on here, I could tell that it's sort of drying nicely. And just going for the pupil. And there we start having the eye come sort of together pretty quickly. I'm going to wait to do the outside because I just want to make sure that that's super dry. The outside perimeter of the color, you know, her eye. Let's go over here while that's drying. You know, watercolor is a timing thing. You really do need to time and make sure everything is, if you know, unless you're working wet into wet, you definitely want to make sure that it's dry. That gives you an opportunity to work in a very precise way. And I'm using, this is a just drying mat. So I'm using that as my way in which I monitor how much paint is actually on my paper and on my brush. So the brush goes from here. I could lift things off. I could move things around. You know, my students know that you can correct watercolors. They're not that hard to correct. We have lots of correction techniques, and I'm just sort of fixing some of the things around her eye a little bit.
Excuse me, Jan, this is Susan.
Yes.
We don't have any questions on YouTube yet, but I do have one of the Zoom viewers of raising their virtual hand. I can unmute them temporarily.
Okay, sure. Go right ahead. Absolutely. It's fine.
Hi, so this is Ellen. I'm wondering,
Hey, Ellen.
hi, how are
Hi.
you? It's looking
Good.
I'm wondering, did you start this last week? Maybe I missed the very beginning.
I just started it right now.
Wow, okay. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind mentioning, you mentioned the paint colors, which is very helpful, but also the brush size would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question. So a lot of the questions that you'll have in terms of my supply list is on my website, but I happen to be using like a 4 right now to get some of the details in her eyes. I just started with a wash that went down that one side of her face, so I don't have a whole lot done. So it's giving me an opportunity to sort of go in and work on things right now. I may use certain different brushes, like this is a little scrubber brush if I want to push back a little bit of color from an area that went into an area maybe a little wetter than I'd like, so I could push that back. The scrubber, you got to be careful because it does affect your paper. The other brush I was using was just a simple number 10 that I got at, you could get at most, interestingly enough, at most galleries in, like if you go to the Met or whatever, they'll have those types of brushes in the museum shop. And they're actually really great brushes. I really love using them. The Dragon's Blood is a color that is made by Mimari Blue. It's an unusual company, not as well known as maybe the Daniel Smiths and the Winsor Newtons. But I took a workshop a lot of years ago, and she used Mimari, and I've just been a fan ever since. And so I use a lot of them for my classes, and I recommend them. They're really fabulous. Just going to switch brushes based on if I'm working in a big area or a small area. So I want to get some more color right in here. So as I build the eyes, I have to go darker on the skin tone. It's just what's going to happen. And you'll see the first wash is just too light. And the same thing's going to happen when I do her hair. So I want to get her hair before too long because it will help me to know how much darker I have to go on her face. It's just the way it rock and rolls. Now, because she is a woman and not the little girl that we did, I can make her lips a little pinker or a little redder. I wouldn't do it for, a young girl. But because she's older, it will look appropriate for her lips to be a little darker. Otherwise, I would just use a simple Dragon's Blood to give us the idea of lips without it looking like lipstick. And mostly with lips, the upper lip is what captures the light. So that's the shadow, is the upper lip, and the lower lip is where you'll have it be where the light sort of hits and you allow it to be lighter. And that's exactly what's going on in the photo. And so what the lower lip will do is capture the light, and then there'll be a shadow, which is exactly what she has, that's underneath the lower lip. It just makes the lower lip look a whole lot better, as opposed to outlining it like you're wearing lip liner. You don't want to do that. So a lot of doing a portrait is really observing what it is that's going on in the lighting. It really makes such a difference. And when you miss the lighting or you don't have lighting, you either have to create it and imagine it, or you have to not use it. And not having lighting really makes it very difficult to paint a portrait. So I think that's one of the things that just attracted me to her, was that she just had great lighting on her besides being absolutely gorgeous. So I'm just switching. I'm still doing a lot of dragon's blood, and I'm just building some of the features on her face very softly. And I know that right now I have to go into her hair. And because I just know I can't really determine how dark she's going to be until I go into her hair, which is very dark. Now, when I'm working a dark and it's a big mess area, I'm going to switch to a bigger brush. This is a number 20, Silver Black Velvet 20. This has got a nice point on it, but it also holds a lot of color. So what I want to do is I want to mix what I call my secret sauce. So my secret sauce is like my darks. So here is my indigo. So I'm going to get some indigo into this tray. And I'm going to get some of my violet into my tray. And I'm going to get some Van Dyke Brown. Let's see how that gets us. Those three colors tell us a whole lot. Now I'm going to tell you why. If you wear black and you go into the sun, your black pants and your black top and your black shoes will all have a different, one will be a little browner, one will be a little cooler, one will be a little warmer, because black is really all the colors in one. So when I put this on, I really am having a whole lot of color. I know that looks really, really scary, but don't worry, I've got it under control. So, you know, these colors will have a bluish tint to them, a brownish tint, or maybe a violet tint. And so depending on how light hits it will depend on where, what colors you see with that. And I don't want to paint hair as much as I want to paint this kind of dew on top of her head and the part, and then the other side, which is lighter. And it's interesting where the light is hitting it, I could see the browns and I could see the blues and I could see the violets. So all those colors are really just the perfect color to build for this hair. And then what I want to do is maybe go to a smaller brush and just get nice hairline. Nice, pull that color down and just maybe have some whiffs coming down. Oh, I should have my rigger ready. That'll help me a lot too, because there'll always be little wisps that we want to have, right? I'm going to use my rigger, load it up with some color. Oops. Okay, well, that's a mistake. Let me show you what to do when you do that. And that is not good, but let me show you that I'm going to lift it up. And maybe what I'll do here is I'll make that part of the background. So I'll come up to that. And so I drop my brush there. Well, maybe that's a good thing that you see that I too make mistakes. And now it's really light, but what that's going to tell me is that I'm probably going to build a background there. Okay, where maybe I might not have. I'm just going to leave that alone right now and not have butterfingers with my brush. Good to see that, you know, that we could correct things. Somebody else might have just freaked out, but now see, with this rigger brush, I could just pull little wisps of her hair down, and that's really all I sort of need to say hair, and the rest is sort of the light hitting it. And a rigger is really, really good for doing these little wisps. And that's why I said before, carry your skin tone into the hair so that you don't have to worry about a helmet head. So did everybody guess when I dropped my brush? Kind of did. But I know I could fix it and I know what to do.
I think if they could talk, they would all say yes.
I know, I get it. I understand. It's okay, but you saw how fast I fixed it and how I'm not worried about it. Just softening, you know, that edge of the hair coming into her face. And now you could see her eyes need to go darker and her eyebrows need to go darker. So my secret sauce is a combination of my deepest brown, my deepest blue, and my deepest purple. I want to get a little bit of color into that ear there. So let me carry some of this up here just to give a little sense of hair movement. Let's see how that dries. I don't want it to get real fussy. You know, it's hair, right? We don't have to really get overly fussy with it. I really don't like to get overly fussy with hair. I just really like it to be suggestive. So it really does tell me that her eyebrows have to go much darker. And now that it's dry, I'm able to do that. Watercolors is always a balance of paint to water, how much paint, how much color, and your application, you know, what you're putting it on with, what kind of brush you're putting it on with. And one nice thing to do here is just to feather this as it comes into the center part of her. You know, don't make it so harsh. You can definitely build that.
Jan, we had Angela who said that she knew you would correct it, but she did gasp.
Ah. Yep. Well, I mean, that's just part of it. That stuff is going to happen. And you could see that there's such wonderful ways to correct a watercolor. And I am really long to embrace every single opportunity to do that. For those of you who have been with me, you know that a magic eraser is a really good correction tool. It's a little bit too big to do there, but you know, there's a lot of places and ways to fix it. And one of the best ways is just with your brush and water, which is exactly what I did. So now we could see her eyebrow. This one's too light. This one is darker. It makes more sense to go darker, but we couldn't do that before. I really needed her hair to be dark to go this dark with her eyebrows. And of course, it's something that you need to sort of see happening and go back and darken it. You don't have to get it the first time. It's the entire painting that you're really working on, not pieces. So I have some blobs over here. So I'm just gonna lightly lift it with a little bit of brush water and lift it a little bit. And I could actually go a little darker. I could go and add some really nice dragon's blood there. You know, when you make a mark like that, it's easy again to like, oh my God, I have to lift all that color off. But really, I prefer to say, I'm going to use that color to my advantage. And I'm going to move it around rather than lift it because I need more color there anyway.
Jan, Jerry has a question. I'm going to unmute her if she wants to
Sure.
unmute herself.
Sure.
Hi, Jan.
Hi.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't gasp because I know you.
Oh, you're so cute. Yeah, you knew I was going to be able to get through it.
Right, right. But I just wanted to see if sometimes you could show us the photograph while you're painting. So
oh, sure.
Just for a minute.
It's up here, but I can put it like.
We saw it at the beginning, but we forgot.
Well, I guess I could do that and not show you my paints.
Okay.
How's
okay,
that?
Thanks.
How's
No,
that?
it's all right. Whatever you want to do. That's perfect. Thanks.
Okie dokies.
Now you can mute me again.
Yeah, those guys know me well. I don't really, not too much shakes me up. Now what I'm doing is I'm tilting my paper and just letting this drip up a little bit so that it goes into her hair. Drier brush will help me to move it and not add more water. So you always want to monitor how much water is on your brush, because if I added water into here, it would push the color aside, but I want to move the color. So by doing it, if I have a drier brush, it gives me the opportunity to move this color around. Now, going over here, what I can do is I have the edge of her face and I can add some color there so that I could, let's pick up the green in her eyes. I don't know, I didn't think to do that before, but let's do that. So I'm going to edge her right here. And now by doing that, I eliminate any mistake that you may think I made. And boom, there it is. If you understand how to fix things, you won't really panic when things happen. And now that really does pick up the color in her eyes really nicely. Stay there. And I want to get a little bit of color in her ear. And then I want to go back in and work on her nose and mouth a little bit more. Oh, we have some latecomers. They were drinking and they forgot to come in. And I am inviting, this is still really wet right here, but by going in there now, I'm inviting some of that color to come over her ear and just hint that there's an ear there and not really worry about having to paint an ear, right? Really don't want to paint an ear. It's really just suggestive. Let me get that rigor back. Really love this rigor. Gives me a really nice opportunity to just build some nice strands on her hair. Now that's bleeding into her head a little bit. I can fix that. Just by stopping it a little bit with a tissue. And again, these things they really do stop it from looking like a helmet on her head. Those soft areas there. Some wisps coming down. I like to work a whole painting all the way around. I really enjoy that. And I think it makes for a better painting rather than doing everything so pieced together. I just find it's a better approach because you're able to move around your painting really, instead of staying in one area and saying, I have to finish this before I go on. It's really, I think it's a much harder way to paint. So I'm just going in and getting some nice dark color. I just want to keep building those eyes a little bit more. Center pupils are beautiful. I want to make sure it's nice and dark.
Diane, I believe, probably speaks for everyone. She said that you did an amazing job with the cover up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's all in knowing what to do. I really rarely worry about it. There's always something that you could do, always. So it's just a matter of having enough tools in your arsenal. Besides, how cool would it look if I panicked? It wouldn't look too good. eyebrow has to come down a little bit further. Yep, that looks much better. And then that center eye. And so there's a lot of correction techniques that we can use. If I don't like a little something, like I think this came a little too far in that way, I have the scrubber brush, very gently lifts color. You have to be careful because you don't want it to affect your paper, but it's a really nice way to just add a little bit of white and go back in and make a correction. So I want to build that nose a little bit more. See how I'm moving around the painting. I'm giving it an opportunity to evolve. And of course, you know, what's so interesting about this is that you could really, you know, you could fuss with something like this for a very, very long time, or you could just say, I got the essence. I'm okay with it being painterly and being able to have it be something that is interpretive as opposed to so literal. And I always sort of go back to that question of just how much information do I really need or want to say what I want to say. So in other words, I have the photo, right? The photo's, you know, here. What changes is that it is now something that we call art. And that's something that you might put on a wall as opposed to a photo of just anybody. This makes it artwork. And we hang art up. We frame it, we mat it, and we hang it on our walls to enjoy it. It's really important, I think. I think it's an important distinction. I mean, listen, I'm not putting down the people who know how to paint so precisely and so accurately and so with such precision. It is an amazing thing. It's just not what I want to do. I want it to be fresh and I want it to be interpretive. So it's where you're at. Oh, and I know what I forgot to do. So the eyes have those around the eye, you know, the irises have those edges, the dark edges. Got to get those. Oh yeah, that finishes it. A little too harsh. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend it in a little bit to the colored part of her eye. It doesn't have to be, otherwise they look a little too stark and a little too starey. You know, you really want to have it be subtle. And so there's definitely some great tricks. If you have an eye that looks too starey, you can, there's so many great tools, that ways in which you could set that eye into the eye socket. And one of the things that we have at our disposal as watercolor artists is that idea of just a lost edge. I don't know if I've talked about that quite yet, but these edges do not have to, everything does not have to be ultra defined, right? We can definitely have an opportunity to lose an edge and still have it be interpretive. So this is my scrubber, and I just want to get that eyelid back a little bit. Again, we have to use this pretty gingerly because it will lift the fibers of the paper if you're not too careful. And I just want to have it be a little bit softer. And one of the things I talk about too is like when you make a mark, you know, blend it in, make a mark, do something with it. Make a mark, do something with it. that just expanded her eye really nicely. I think I want to give a little bit of tone to that side of her face. Well, let me finish her lips first. So lips have to, you know, all of these things have to be built. So now I'm just going to go in with a darker color and just focus on, she kind of has those share lips, you know, that little sweetheart kind of lip. So I just have to go in and now separate and add a little bit more darkness to where her lips part. And watercolors dry lighter, so we need to always go back in and make adjustments, like this nostril area. Just have to build that. And you're really not painting the nose. I talk about this. You're painting the shadows that the nose is creating. You're painting the shapes that the light and the shadows are hitting on her lips. That's what you're painting. And if you could separate those two things, it really makes a very big difference in how you approach a painting. But most people want to go in and paint the nose, the nostrils, the, you know, and that's really, it's a tough way to go about it. It really is much more difficult than just looking for all of the beautiful dark shadows. So that's why lighting really will make a very big difference in your, you know, in your portrait, if you have something that's well lit. And when I saw this, I knew this was well lit, and I knew that that lighting would help me with what I was going to be painting. I knew that that was going to be helpful. How are we doing on time? I'm not even looking really.
You still have about 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, all the time in the world. Just doing some little correction techniques, little things that I want to kind of fix up a little bit. I do want to go in and get her neck a little bit more, her chin, and her shirt, just to indicate that a little bit. How's it look to everybody? Just add a little tone on that side, just a little bit. And of course, she's not exactly facing forward, so we do have to foreshorten one side of her lips and move her noses over, and you know, this eye is a little bit more prominent. You have to account for all of those things. So you can't say, oh, you know, the lips are forward. You have to throw them in a 3/4 view. Just adding some shadow into this corner right here. I think it's a really good spot to add some nice shadow into. Let's carry that down and give her neck a little bit more color here, chin. So this is what I say, make a mark, do something with it. Make a mark and do something with it, which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm just feathering it out on both sides so it's nice and soft, but you know it's a little bit darker right there. And I just want to give a hint of her dress here. It's interesting, by adding this red, I want to add some red into her clothes a little bit. I'm going to tone that down with a little bit of green. Green and red are the complements. So notice how that will now carry over there in a very nice way. Little counter of what you might think to do, but it really does work. I love using the complements to create toning down of colors or creating really some nice, interesting colors. I like the way that looks. Little too strong for the corner, so I'm just going to lift a little bit up. Yeah, okay, I'm good with that. Now I want to give a little bit more red into her face because that really powered that up a lot for me. So now I'm going to take a little bit of red and I'm just going to go into some nice areas. I think right here would be a nice spot where I was before, because there's something called reflective color, right?
I noticed we don't have as many questions this week, and I think it's just because everyone is mesmerized by.
Oh,
what you're
gosh. Well, I'm glad you are. It's certainly, you know, when you work this way, you really are just, I mean, you're really just looking in and over my shoulder. You know, you really are, because I'm here and I'm in it in the moment. Yeah, I love the way that red, you see how that red, and even I had a little bit of green on my brush, a little bit of green got into her face, and I really am very happy with that. Somebody might run in, you know, say no, but I think that it really works well. Carrying a little bit more pink into her cheek. And I think I could make her lips a little bit redder on the outside, and I think I'm going to call it, I think I'll stop. You see how I just couldn't have started that dark to begin with. It would have looked too unnatural, but now that we have it all working within everything else that we've done, I think it works just fine. I'm really, yeah. She does have eyelashes, but you got to be careful with eyelashes. You don't want to go like you're painting them like a Twiggy. So I'm going to be very ginger with them and just give them a few little, I don't even know if I like that. Let me just carry them a little bit further. See, might be a little too wet. I think it's a little too wet there to do that. But you just have to suggest them. Might be better if I just suggested her lower lid with a couple. Because you just don't want it to look too painted on. You just want a suggestion of it. Any mark I make, I'm really not worried. I've got so much time to correct things. I really do. It's just amazing how much time you have. I'm going to call it somewhat done. I might like just take a moment to, stand back from it a little bit. And of course, one of the things that I like to do is to take my cut up mat board and do this with it. And there you have it. What time is it? Oh, 10 minutes to spare. Whew.
That was great. So Jan, do you have some advice on knowing when it's time to stop painting and stop fussing with it?
Oh gosh, that is such a good idea. A good question. Uh, you just have to stop. You just have to stop. You have to trust that maybe you have enough marks. And then you have to take it, you have to put it in a mat, and then you have to hang it vertically because I think I said it last week, this is how we look at artwork. We put this in a frame, in a mat, and we can see it clearer that way. We can see, do I need more or not? So I always have, all of my frames ready to go at any point, because I just want to, even if I just tape it to the front of it, it tells me, do I need to do any more? And maybe a little bit more. I could see a couple of spots, but going over it too much gives you an overworked feel. If you want it to be a sort of on a fresher side of things, then working the way that I work is a very good process. That initial wash, going back into the eyes, building the lips, building the shadows of the nose. You can't really finish those features until you go into the hair. And then you go back and you build it. So you could see how many times I went back into certain areas to help me along with it, because if you go in too fast with the eyes, they'll look outlined. If you go in too fast with the nose, you're going to make harsh marks up for the nostrils. If you go too harsh and dark with the lips, you're going to look like she's wearing lip liner. So I recommend this sort of moving around the painting. And I like that idea of it. You build a painting. You don't just build eyes and oh, I'm done. It's very hard to do that. In my opinion, it's always easier to sort of go back into it and look at it as a whole. I couldn't have finished this if I waited last minute to do her hair. Then probably her features would have looked either overdone and too harsh, or perhaps they would have been, you would have realized that they're too light and you have to go back in anyway. So, and I think I got a pretty good likeness. So let me just do this.
If anyone would like to ask questions, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Jan, what color did you use to do the flesh tones?
It's a color. I start off with a color called Dragon's Blood. It's made by a company called Mamari. And
Oh yeah, I tried to get it online. They're back ordered. It's hard to find that color. Is that the only color you would suggest, or is there a substitute besides that one?
So there are other colors that you could try, like perhaps a burnt sienna might be close on the oranger side, or a burnt sienna and maybe a little bit of orange. You definitely want to put a little rose in there, maybe a little bit of violet. If you go too orange, use the complement and go with like a cerulean blue, believe it or not, because blue and orange are the complements. They'll tone each other down.
Okay.
So I think all of the manufacturers, all the suppliers, everybody's, trying to get re-geared up. And of course, Mamori is an Italian paint company, and, we know what happened there. And so, and Blix was carrying it, and so was Reeby's. And, the past 5 months, everything sort of got wiped out. But if you could find it, I do recommend it. Venetian red is another good color. And I think Daniel Smith has an Italian Venetian red, which is close. It's a little more opaque, but that could work also. I haven't used it, but you could try that.
Okay,
What's
thank
the paper you use?
I use Arches 300-pound hot press. It's a very stiff paper. Arches not 140 cold, which is thin. You could see I have no buckles going on here. If I had used 140, it would have been buckling all over. And what happens with cold press is there's a lot of hills and valleys because it's toothy. And there's even a something called rough. When you do landscapes, you want that skipping of your brush, that dry mark, approach to things. But when I'm doing a portrait, I want it to be very smooth. And so I really love the idea of giving, this paper still has tooth to it, but it's smoother and it does not buckle for me.
Yeah.
So
Great, thank you.
it's a great combination. It really is. And, I'm not as fussy with my brushes, interestingly enough. I don't care for sable because I find they get mushy and lazy. And so I'm really good with the synthetics right now because they're really sharp. And I'll show you what I mean. They're very snappy. They snap. And I like a snappy brush. I don't like when you do a brush and it just kind of, it's a mop almost. That doesn't work for me. Especially with the way that I work. So I feel, and again, on my website, I have this whole templates and color wheel and my actual colors that I use. This is my palette right here. This is downloadable. So you can see all of my colors. And these are my color swatches. So I know what every single color does for me. And I always, of course, recommend that you know what your colors can do for you. And I have some videos up too that demonstrate all of this stuff for you.
And you're getting lots of compliments from the YouTube viewers. And one last question is somebody wants to know, when you mix and blend the colors in the tray, does that interfere with future paintings?
No, because I clean out my tray. I'll just clean this out. And one thing I didn't mention about mixing is I've seen artists really mix their colors so that they are it's like a new color. And what I like to do is sort of drop my colors into, if I'm going to mix, a lot of times I just mix on my paper. But if I'm mixing a little bit in my palette, what I'll do is I'll have my blue, my brown, my violet. Those are my three darks. And I just gently mix them together because when my brush goes through them, I want to see all three colors come up in my brush. So I don't over mix. I don't really find that that's super helpful for me to do that because I don't believe in just mixing a color and then there it is, because then things will shift and change when you try to remix it, right? If you run out. So better to kind of get used to not over mixing, I would say, and just letting those colors, because if you look on here, I'll hold it a little closer, you can see the violets and the reds and the oranges and the pinks and the greens. And I like seeing those colors. And even in her hair, I can see the browns and the violets and the blues. So to me, that makes it a more painterly painting as opposed to...
So, folks, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Harborfields Library and the South Huntington Library, we want to thank everyone for joining us. And just remember that there is one more session next week. We'll see you then.
Thanks, guys. Great seeing everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Harborfields, South Huntington, thank you so much for sponsoring this. It's a blast.
Great.
I'm going to get my cocktail now. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.
See you guys.